From Olympic City and the home of Pikes Peak, this is the Automotive ADHD Show. Oh yeah, here we are rocking it on the Automotive ADHD Show. My name is Matt West, here to talk about cars. I am the host of this show, the professional lip flapper, the blabbermouth, I don't know, whatever you would like to call me. But I am the host of this show, and I'm here to talk about cars. Got an amazing, packed show for you today with a special guest. In the second half of the show, a 13-time Guinness World Record holder, Alastair Moffatt, is going to be joining me and talking about some of his world records, how he accomplished some of them, some of his background. It's very, very cool. And as a result, too, I'm also going to be changing up a little bit of the format of the show. Normally, I do the show in kind of 3 different segments. I'm going to break that down into 2. We're just going to keep it kind of nice, short and sweet here for the first one, because I want to give my guest as much time as possible. This interview is going to be fantastic. Very cool. Now, that said, I do have some other interesting things to talk about before that, namely license plates. Going to be talking about front license plates, the dreaded front plates, and perhaps a better business decision than that time last week when I recommended that everyone spend $43 billion in order to buy every Camry in existence. I know, you can tune into this show for really sound financial advice. Yeah. Okay. I hope that's what you're tuning into this show for, because, that's what we do. That's what we do. No, that said, I want to just dive straight into that in the spirit of moving quickly through things. Ladies, gentlemen, Toyota Soarers, let's talk about a financial decision that I think is very good, which is that for sale is the absolute treasure trove of Honda parts for any Honda fan, and this is amazing. So it comes from a dealership in the country of Jordan, and it's a warehouse full of Honda parts dating back from 1974 all the way to 2015. And apparently, the story goes there was a Honda dealership there in the country of Jordan that went out of business. They closed up shop, and in said dealership, they had a warehouse, though. The dealership dated back all the way to the 70s, and they had a warehouse full of parts that they have just kept on hand for a tremendously long time, not selling them. Everything from brand new OEM doors, bumpers, to transmissions, engines, seals, gaskets, all the nitty-gritty little stuff, and it's all well organized in this warehouse and just sitting there in Jordan. And this is really interesting because, I mean, when you think of it, the possibilities are just endless for these parts, and this can cover any Honda fan, me liking, S2000s and things like that, all the way to people rebuilding classic, first generation Civics could make use of this. Now, the reason I'm telling you about this is this warehouse full of parts is for sale. Yes, here we go. They are asking $1.75 million as the buy it now price on eBay. And I should disclose, if you go to this eBay listing now, apparently there were some issues with the listing. Perhaps asking that much money on eBay, I'm not sure. There was an error when you go to it right now, because I was like, oh, come on, I got to go bid on this. I don't even care if I've got the money. Let's just see what happens. And currently the bidding is closed, and they haven't sold it yet. So it's a little weird. And they are including shipping, by the way. I'm looking at this parts listing. It's on eBay. It says Honda rare parts lot. And going into some of the details, again, it's incredible. Also, not every day you find a eBay listing with a buy it now price of $1.75 million, but they are including shipping. So, hey, that's good. By the way, the shipping, the flat rate, it says flat rate shipping. Yeah, $50,000. I'm sure that's legitimately what it would cost to box all of this stuff up, put it in some shipping containers, and freight it over to whichever country you live in. And obviously, you would want to avoid certain shipping containers and ships, that are known for sinking. The Felicity Ace of a couple months ago with all those cars that sank. That would be tragic to lose this sort of treasure trove of Honda parts. And but yeah, they this is just cool. Like, there's tons of parts. It says 76% of the parts are 1974 to the model year 2000, and 24% of the parts are 2001 to 2015. Now, see, this is where the astute businessman in me comes out and says, yes, Honda parts, good. But think of it this way, right? Like, I just need some, miscellaneous parts here and there for an S2000 and, some stuff to sell to my buddies with Civics. And that's all I need. The rest of it, holy cow. I mean, you could sell this. You could make a whole business selling vintage Honda parts, and you could probably run a business doing this for several years before you ran out of money, or not money. Hopefully you don't run out of money doing this. That's not the goal you want, but before you run out of parts. And imagine, throwing $1.75 million in there. That breaks down to with all the parts, considering how many there are, that is an average of about $19 a part. And so that's $19 a part average. Doesn't matter if it's a panel clip and a connector, or an entire door, or an entire subframe for a Civic. It's $19. So, and I guarantee if you were selling this stuff, you could, sell it for a lot more than $19 a part. In fact, I'm damn sure you would be selling it for more than $19 a part. And especially some of these vintage parts. You can't underestimate the price of vintage parts, and it's kind of hard to price them initially, but the fact is, hey, you want a smart business decision? Here we go. Buy all of these Honda parts. Be the king. You would be the dawn of Honda parts. I don't know. That would be kind of cool. If only I had $1.75 million cash sitting in my bank account. You know how I would be spending it. Just saying. Now, that said, if you do go the route that I talked about on last week's show of buying every single Toyota Camry that exists, and you have a few million left over, I think the math we did, it was there's going to be a little left over. You could buy that, and you could buy all these Honda parts, I should say. And I think you would be a happy person. Every Camry in the world, boatload of Honda parts. I mean, yeah, you can't use the Honda parts for the Camry. Now, if only there was a similar lot of parts like this for sale that were Toyota parts, then you could also maintain your fleet of Camrys. So, yeah, again, here you go. You don't go to, Wall Street for fine business decisions. You don't listen to Elon Musk. This is why you listen to this show. So, anyway, now, another topic I want to get onto real quick here before my guest here coming up in the second half of the show. And again, my guest is going to be 13-time Guinness World Record holder Alastair Moffatt. No, another thing is license plates. And me as a car enthusiast, and perhaps you, all share the collective opinion that front license plates are the worst thing in existence. The front of cars were not designed with the notion of license plates in mind, and even cars that had them integrated, no, it just doesn't. It doesn't work. You ask any car enthusiast, does the car look better with the front plate or without the front plate? It always looks better without. I mean, this is just a universal fact. Fight me. But that said, I have to give a hat tip to Rob Stumpf of The Drive, who did some investigative journalism here and decided to look into the states that in the United States that require front license plates and the states that do not. Now, some of this may not be entirely relevant to friends of the show living in Europe and other places where you just have to have front plates. And I'm sorry, you have my condolences, but here in the United States, there is a stiff battle for front plate or no front plate. And again, you know where I stand on this debate. Now, obviously, officially, I can't recommend legally that you don't run a front plate because that is a crime if you live in a place that requires it. But you know my opinion on this, regardless. And the state I'm in, Colorado, does require 2 license plates, one on the front, one on the back. But there are a good chunk of states that do not. For instance, Arizona being one of those, Louisiana, Florida. There's a good chunk of them, and the thing is, in the states where there are no front plates, there's an interesting political campaign going on. And I know I usually shy away from politics on this show unless it is explicitly related to something happening in the automotive sector. But there is a political campaign going on to promote the use of front license plates. Now, Rob at the Drive, he said, this is interesting. Who is the proponent behind all this political lobbying for front license plates? No one is sitting there, no car owner sits there and thinks to themselves, oh, yes, I really wish I had a front license plate. But yet here's this lobbying, and it turns out one of the major companies behind said lobbying is 3M. Now, 3M is a major manufacturer of all sorts of things, from stickers to adhesive to gaskets to safety equipment to military equipment. 3M is a massive, massive company. And they even make vinyl wrap products. When you wrap your car, but probably, 30-40% of the time, the vinyl that the car is being wrapped in is made by 3M. You also have Avery Dennison as a competitive manufacturer doing that. But the point is, 3M is a gigantic company. They don't just make stickers. I mean, they make everything, including, get this, license plates. Yeah, and more specifically, they make the plates, but they also make the reflective material that gets painted onto the plates in a way, and they stamp them, and they do all this stuff, and they make some of the equipment that the plates are made with. So they're not always making plates. In a lot of cases, they're making equipment that's being sold to the states in order to make the plates, and they're making the supplies in order to do it. But having said that, they have this huge campaign going on for front plates. And I'm going to look through. They have a cute little sales flyer about this, and we're going to look at some of their arguments. To be a fair person, it is just, as a talk show host, it is just my duty to provide you both sides of this. And they say, they say some of the benefits are enforcing tolls and parking, enforcing vehicle registration, crime apprehension, and national security, they say, are the benefits of license plates, and also vehicle identification. And 19 states, by the way, currently, they say, only have one plate. So they're really going for the states that don't have a requirement for a second front license plate, which, there possibly cannot be a conflict of interest with a company that makes license plates trying to pass laws that require you to have not one, but two license plates. It's a very easy way to literally just double your sales figures. But they say there are 270 million registered vehicles in the United States, which I'm not going to argue that fact. That is from the U.S. Department of Transportation. That is a statistic from them. And that 19 states do not require plates on the front. Now they say, and I'll breaking down some of their reasons for front plates. Like one thing they made as an argument is having reflectivity at night. If you've got a stalled vehicle on the road and perhaps it doesn't have power, doesn't have electricity, so you don't have even the hazard flashers running, it's just an abandoned vehicle, having a reflective front license plate on it can totally help motorists see it. But more often than not, those motorists who are going to be coming up on it are going to be coming up on it from behind if it's stalled and you're traveling in the same direction. So then the rear plate usually covers that. And then when it comes to crime apprehension, they say that, and here's another statistic from them, that criminal apprehension, they say, works better with two license plates, citing that 70% of all serious crimes involve a motor vehicle. Well, here's the thing. When you have a bad guy who is stealing things and using a getaway vehicle, when was the last time bad guys said, oh yeah, the law says I must run two license plates, so I better make sure I'm running two plates while I'm committing this crime because, I want to make sure I'm on the up and up with my vehicle registration. No, of course not. Criminals don't do that. In fact, I talked a couple months ago on the show about how my mother had her catalytic converter stolen right in front of her house. And that's one of those things that, the guy who actually stole the catalytic converter, caught him on security camera and everything, well, guess what he didn't have? He just didn't have license plates. A front license plate would have done literally nothing to identify and apprehend this criminal because he wasn't running a rear plate either. No, of course, you're committing a crime. Why would you have something so identifiable as a license plate? So 3M, in their political lobbying, using this as a talking point, saying that, yes, front plates truly help with crime. I'm sure it helps with very minor instances of crime, and perhaps when vehicles are stolen from law-abiding citizens who have front license plates, I'm sure that helps. But using that as an excuse, saying that this will help us identify criminals and getaway vehicles. No, they don't run front plates. Like, they're already committing one crime. What's to say that they're law-abiding enough to make sure their vehicle is registered and that they're running the required 2 license plates? So I have to disagree with 3M on this. And again, I live in a state that requires 2 license plates, and that is one unfortunate fact of living in the beautiful state of Colorado in the shadow of Pikes Peak. I'm looking at it out my window right now as I'm doing the show here. And of course, we have the Pikes Peak Hill climb, and we have some cool stuff that goes on in the automotive world here. The one drawback, yeah, they front plates. And I will admit, hey, I'll admit it right here publicly on the show. I have been known in the past to not run a front plate. And when I have been occasionally stopped by a police officer, sometimes the front plate is a question of, hey, where's your front plate? And then you find me quickly scrambling to throw it up on the windshield or something and keep it under the seat, or it's rolling around somewhere. I don't know. So, yeah, I can't officially recommend that you break the law and that you should absolutely follow it. But, like, when it comes to front plates, can we be, I don't know. It's just, yeah, there are some valid reasons why they are relevant. Again, when it comes to, when it comes to being reflective at night, that's very helpful. But the other conflict of interest here that Rob at the Drive pointed to was that 3M manufactures the same license plate reading systems that the police use. And, police in all major cities now, at least here in the U.S., more often than not, are using automated license plate readers. You see the cameras on the side of the patrol cars, these little kind of nodes, these little modules sitting on the corners of the car. A lot of times those are not necessarily the radar equipment. Some of them are, but a lot of times those are cameras that automatically read license plates. And as a police officer is driving down the road, and the thing is, the license plate reader is just scanning license plates constantly and just tallying up which ones it sees. And they use this for statistics, and they use this for other things. And sure, it might help occasionally find a stolen vehicle. But again, when was the last time a criminal stole a car and left the license plate on it? You have to be a numbskull of a criminal to do that. And more often than not, they don't. The criminals are I don't want to give the criminals credit, but more often than not, they're smart enough to know to take the plates off. That's a pretty obvious one. So having said that, 3M makes the license plates. They make the equipment that makes the license plates that also is sold to states, and they make the equipment that is sold to police that scans the license plates. Again, I'm not trying to point any fingers here, but when they throw a heavy, heavy amount of advertising and lobbying at states that don't require 2 license plates, it makes you raise an eyebrow at the very least. Though, that said, again, we can defeat all of these arguments simply as an auto enthusiast. Well, I don't like how they look. That's not a very sound argument. I know. But it's very true. From a, like, when was the last time you looked at a front license plate on a Ferrari and said, gosh, that's a good looking plate with the Ferrari stuck to it? No, it doesn't happen unless you're in Dubai. Oh, that is one exception. In Dubai, they have auctions for license plates, and very rare and special custom license plates. In fact, there was one that sold for another couple, I think it was $9 million earlier this week. And I mentioned it on a previous show a little while back as well about how one guy owns the most expensive license plate ever, and it's like it's the letter 5. Right, there we go. Hold on. The number 5, of course, the letter 5. Okay, I clearly haven't had enough coffee going into this, but yeah, there we go. The letter 5. So anyway, front plate or not to front plate? That is the question. Let me know your thoughts. Now, I don't want to wait any longer getting to my special guest. Alastair Moffatt, 13-time Guinness World Record holder for precision driving, is joining me right after the break.
At the Speed Council, getting things done fast is our priority. We do everything fast, from driving, working, sleeping, and eating.
Someone help, he's choking!
This is Tim.
Hello.
And by the time this ad is over, he'll have bicycled across the earth 69 times. Nice. Even if our name sounds unfamiliar, you know our work. F1? Pfft, child's play. The world's first supersonic jet? Yup, that was us. Apollo 11? Also us. The fastest animal in the sea? Hell, we even wrote the Wikipedia article. Fast. And we're so dedicated to speed that we've genetically engineered the world's first hyperspeed speed machine. With this scientific breakthrough, you can download your favorite automotive podcast a whole day early. How's that for fast? Patreon.com/Throttle Warrior. Donate now. Download the show early and receive special perks. This message approved by the Speed Council and the Church of Fast Things.
Oh yeah, there we go. We are rocking it on the Automotive ADHD show. That car sound is courtesy of listener Brad Stapp. That is his 1964 Mercury Breezeway at the drag strip, racing his buddy in his 1964 Mercury Marauder. Two hot rods racing at the drag strip. How cool is that? Those Mercuries, by the way, they look incredible. The cars of the 60s, man. Oh my gosh. The styling is just absurd. I love it. Now, that said, if you have car sounds you want to share, you can share those and be entered for a chance to win the Automotive ADHD keychain. I've got one of those sitting here on the desk. It tells your friends you have questionable tastes in podcasts, and it's also a convenient keychain. So, dual purpose item right there. You also get a $25 gift certificate to your favorite parts store. Send those car sounds in to Matt@throttlewarrior.com or post them on the Facebook page, facebook.com/automotive ADHD. Now, I don't want to wait any longer getting to my next guest. His name is Alastair Moffatt, and he has 13 Guinness World Records for incredible feats of precision driving. His stunt driving work has been seen on television and movies, having worked as well with the BBC, National Geographic, and countless auto manufacturers. And now he is on my very humble podcast and radio show. Alastair, thank you for joining me on the show.
Hi, Matt. Nice to speak to you here from England.
So before we talk about your records, which are extensive, let's get into your background. As I understand, so you started out in doing a lot of motorsports, but just walk me through a little bit of your background, where you came from, and how that has now transformed over the years to you having 13 current Guinness World Records.
Yeah, so I started really young. I did the normal thing at age of 10, went into go-karts, and then as soon as I could get into an actual car, there's a sport over here called auto testing. I think it's called in the States with you, possibly slaloms, and it incorporates forward and reverse driving against the clock, a start and a finish gate, and you basically got to do cover that ground as fast as possible. And so I entered that when I was at 16 and managed to win the British Championship at that 7 times. And so that's my sort of background with that, and done other stuff, car trials and hill climbs and sprints, and a bit of an all-rounder at sort of anything with a wheel. I'll have a go at trying to drive it as fast or as hard as possible, really. So and then it sort of led into I got asked to do some displays with the auto testing when I was quite young, and moved on from there, really.
Wow, very cool. And here I believe we call that usually, I think, autocross now. And it's you got a big course with a lot of cones, and that's perhaps one of the friendliest ways to start into any sort of performance driving, I would say. It's very cool. I've gone to some of the events here, and I mean, there are kids out there who are 16, so starting out a lot like you did. Now, looking at just a few of your records, tightest forward parallel park, narrowest gap driven on two wheels, tightest 360-degree spin in a car, and tightest triple forward parallel park. I triple forward. I'm pretty sure that wasn't on the driving exam when I took it, but what challenge or which record would you say was the most challenging?
The most challenging record that I've done is the narrowest gap driven through on two wheels by two cars. So we had to actually, my brother had to learn how to drive on two wheels. I had previously learned, and we had to get two minis through a gap at exactly the same time on two wheels, and it was so tight. It was just unbelievable. His wheel was in front of my windscreen as we went through the gap. It was that tight. And obviously it's very easy when a car's on the ground to be that precise, but when you're actually trying to balance something at the same time, you do have an element of sway in the car and how it's reacting. So it was a bit of a synchronized sort of sway of the cars as it went through the gap, and that was by far the hardest challenge I've had to do. So the level of achievement was immense. So.
Wow. And again, it's incredible. And when you look at some of those achievements, and I was just looking through some of the world records you have, and you look at that and you go, how is that even possible? And also, like when you talk to the guys, I'm sure when you call up the folks at Guinness and they go, wait, you're going to do what with the car?
Yeah. So, I mean, very few of the records are new, so they're all current records. So there is guidelines, and they can to actually achieve that record. And that, like for example, the forward parallel park. I mean, that is designed originally in the wording for that for parking alongside, pulling alongside a car, and then reversing into the space. And then it moved on that it got so tight that was unachievable. So then that they allowed you to have a run up at it and actually handbrake it into the space at about 30 or 40 mile an hour. So that record has been on a world tour. I've lost that record about 3 times to either there was a couple of guys in China and a guy in Germany were determined to prevent me from actually holding that record for more than about 3 or 4 months. But I got the record down to 7.5 centimeters, which is sort of a cross diagonal of a post-it note, slightly less than that. And that's combined front and rear gap. And that record has stood for the longest it's ever stood for now. So since about 2015, I think it was. So it's got it with every world record. It gets to the point where, as I said, if you win a world rally championship or Formula One championship or a NASCAR or something like that, you only have to be the best that year. But to do a world record, nobody has ever done it tighter, faster, or harder in the history of that record. So somebody will have to pull out all the stops to try and beat that 7.5 centimeters. It was a big challenge to get it, and they will struggle.
Right. And when you're doing these records as well, or when you're looking for other records, do you see guys who do a record and say, oh, I think I can beat that as well? What's sort of the thought process that goes into when you find a record like that to maybe beat?
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of practice goes into some of them. A two-wheeling is not naturally something that you learn in your driving test or something like that. So to actually achieve some of them, a lot of practice goes into it. The thought process is that I'm as good as anyone else, so why would I not be able to do it better? So and you've got to go into the mindset that that is the case. And I've got quite a good skill set to driving in precision. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the best at driving at 200 mile an hour around Indy 500. That's not my skill set. Mine is precision and down to the centimetre, down to the millimetre precision driving. So You basically concentrate on what you're good at, and that's what I excel at. So I'll keep on doing those records, and I don't think I'll go for the speed records. I don't think.
I'd say the speed records are a little more hazardous too, in case if you're practicing, and heaven forbid something goes wrong. So they're just a tiny bit more hazardous. Now, when you do these records, so sometimes, I've been watching a bunch of them. Sometimes it's at an airstrip with a, television crew and Guinness comes out there. And other times you've done this in front of, in an arena with spectators and people. And, what goes through your mind when you're, behind the wheel? You're behind the wheel of the car. You're ready to go. Everyone's rolling. Do you ever get the nerves when you're going into it?
Yeah, you do. But the motorsport kicks in then, really. The being able to cope with the pressure and actually still being able to pull off a decent result. That's what motorsport has done the most. A lot of the other people that have done these records have learned a process to actually, the car. If you look at the marks of the car on on stuff on YouTube, the car is. They just drive in, 500 times into a space and get a process down to it. But when it comes to the pressure and actually achieving it, you need to have to step the game up, and the motorsport and that is actually that's the biggest thing that I've taken from that.
Okay, and that's why you're a professional at it as well. Very, very cool. Now, again, my guest is precision driving world record holder Alastair Moffatt. And Alastair, so you also operate a company called Stunt Drive UK. Now, I would assume by the name that it involves stunt driving, but you also told me before before the show here that it was the first stunt driving company of its kind in the UK. What sort of stuff do you guys do?
So we just teach people that just want to come on an experience day or anything from that through to we've taught stuntmen and women from all over the world. So from Australia and China have come to us to learn some of the tricks of the trade, really. So we do handbrake turns, the parallel park, and J turns, and we also have got a classic mini which has got a stabilizer, much the same as you'd have when you were learning how to ride a bike on the side of it. And that allows us to teach the general public how to actually give them the sensation of actually driving a car on two wheels. So the car will go up to over 45 degrees and quite safely because it's got a stabilizer to stop it going over any further. And so it's a great day out, and it's a good fix for any adrenaline junkie that wants to have a go at it, really.
Wow, that is very cool, because that's one thing that I think of when I see precision driving, or when you see the guys on, for instance, television ads, and maybe in a Mercedes commercial swinging a car around or doing some sort of stunt driving. The question, at least to me always, being at least a car guy, has always been, oh gosh, how do you get into that? Like, I can go to the local track and spend a few bucks and go do an open lapping day. I can go do a rally event. But like when you get to that professional level, I mean, things are a little different. And it sounds like your company is kind of able to at least provide a little bit of a gateway into people getting into that. Now, where for someone who would be interested in doing more stunt driving, precision driving, where's the next step, would you say, from, just being an enthusiast to actually going out and doing it and, learning from professionals?
I mean, you've got to obviously have a decent skill set. So most of the stuntmen and women within the UK that actually are on, there's a register for that. And to be on that, you've got to be at a certain level in certain characteristics of sport. So you've got to be a high level of a motorsport, a high level of you've got to have a couple of martial arts in there, and so you've got to be a finely tuned athlete in good at most stuff, really. So that's to get onto the stunt register and that. So it does involve a lot of commitment and work. It's not something that you can just say, I'm good at driving a car, and I'm willing to take the risk in that. It's to enable you to be able to absorb impacts and stunts and that. It's not something particularly that I'm exceptionally keen on doing, and I wouldn't necessarily want to drive off a perfectly decent bridge in a car. It's that's not something my skill set lends itself to. It's more precision driving, really.
Right.
I quite like. I've got no desire to be cannoned off a Grand Canyon or anything like that. It's I'll stick to my precision sort of stuff, and let some of the others have a go at all the martial arts stuff and that.
Very cool, very cool, and it and it's amazing to see how you create a career out of precision driving and master it to the 10th degree. Now that's very, to me at least, very cool and very inspirational. Now, looking through your website, stuntdriveuk.com, I noticed on a lot of the things, just a side question, but I noticed you got a whole fleet of minis. I see a lot of minis. Now, is there a certain choice platform you look to when you're doing some of this precision driving?
Okay, so the reason we've picked the Mini for our stunt driving experience days is just purely and simply it's iconic. It's the car that people love to drive, and the Italian job really is the key thing. The red, white, and blue Mini, and it puts a smile on their face just looking at the car, let alone actually driving it. So the car is exceptionally good. It's basically a box, and it's very easy to actually achieve all the stunt. Well, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's easier to do it with a classic car without any of the aids of ABS and traction control and all the stuff that I hate and have to disconnect if ever I want to have any fun in the car. So we go back to basics of a car with no aids. That's the key thing with that car. So yeah.
Awesome. And you're right, it absolutely is iconic. And when you look at your website there, Stunt Drive UK, and it's got minis on the front, when I think of small, nimble, British cars, I mean, Mini right there. That's first and foremost. Now you've got loads of accomplishments in your name already, but is there anything on your radar, be it records, be it motorsports, or more stunt driving, precision driving? Is there anything that you haven't done yet that you're looking to do?
There's always another goal. Records. There is one particular one I'd like to go. It's not. It would be if you must have seen the reversed, your viewers or listeners might not have seen it, but the Titus reverse parallel park, which was a white Mini reversing flat out across a car park at 40 mile an hour, and then it does a J turn and then into a parallel parking space all in one movement. That's my most iconic world record, and that took some learning and practicing. I'd like to try and actually put another element to that record and make it even harder than what it was. So that's the record I'd like to try and do, actually get another bit of a spin into that or something. So to make it even harder, because it was hard enough as it was.
I was going to say, I mean, it's already pretty difficult, and you're saying, no, let's make it harder now. Let's make it harder.
Yeah, well, that's it. So, as I said, that was a record which I took off another couple of guys, and they've bowed down to that one again. So, so we might have to make it a little bit harder. But that record, the key thing the you say about the minis and that, the reason I used a Mini on that, it's interesting to know that a classic Mini will do 3 mile an hour faster in reverse gear than it will in first gear. So that's why I picked that. It's got the highest top speed in reverse gear that I can find. So and that's what you needed to get into that space. So
really, at least coming from my background, I never knew that about the minis, and then that kind of ties into why it's like, well, the Mini, you used it for this reason, and this is why you did it, and that's super cool. That is fascinating.
Yeah. So with that record as well, we only had a few attempts. The one thing we did try and sort it out, but was something which was slightly overlooked, that the sheer speed that it was going at, the engine got zero cooling because of because it's not designed to go backwards at that speed. So you only got about 3 attempts at that record before you had to let the engine cool for about 15 minutes to 20 minutes, because it was you could fry an egg on it. It was that hot. And we'd tried ducting air into it, but it hadn't really solved the issue. So that was achieved within 2 attempts, and I only had one left before I had to have a half an hour tea break. So so it was, the pressure was on to achieve it, and it was, and that was in front of the world stage as well. So it was really cool.
Wow. And that's another case I would have never thought that that's a factor you have to consider when driving in reverse, is that, well, the radiator's in the front of the car. And it also just goes to point out, too, that you're doing these records with otherwise fairly unmodified cars. They're not drastically modified. They're not modified to be suddenly mid-engined in order to do it. I mean, it's a average car at the end of the day that, you're doing these feats of precision driving in, which is incredible.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the films nowadays, if you look at the old James Bond films, and the cars are actually doing the stunts for real, the corkscrew jump and the 2-wheeling and all that. And nowadays they just tend to put stabilizers on it or CGI it in, and so the cars don't actually have to achieve a great lot, really. So it's nice to actually go back to basics and sit there with a pen and paper and work out the physics and see if it's possible to even achieve it in a car with no aids and no supports. And it's a great achievement, or sense of achievement, when you actually achieve it in something which was never designed to even do half of the stuff that you do with it.
Right. Now, and are there any sort of you mentioned like old James Bond films there? Are there any sort of like inspirations that you look at like that maybe kind of at least get the gears turning in your head about ideas and things to do and things like that?
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the TV ads and stuff like that. It's quite interesting what people actually think of with actual stunts and even CGI in it, and actually not actually doing it, but doing it with CGI. And is that even possible to do that with a car? And some of it is, and some of it obviously isn't. But there's a few TV adverts over here in the UK at the minute which are going around, which I think could actually be achieved with a car with a bit of effort. So we might try and have a go at some of those, I think.
Wow, perhaps another world record in the future as well?
Yes, I think so. So obviously the world sort of came to a halt for a couple of years, and I need a bit more seat time, really, to get match fit. We've not been able to drive anywhere over here in the UK for a lot, sort of thing. We've been sort of I've started back on the motorsport this year, and it's going okay. So that normally gets me back up to speed pretty quick. So I think about another half a season of this. So and we'll see if we can get something going by the end of the year, maybe for a world record around November time is my aim. Because they do a Guinness World Records Day in November, you see, and I'll try and get a record for that day. So what they do is they do a world tour. It starts in Australia, and somebody does a world record in Australia, and it works its way across the country. And I've represented England on, which was my reverse parallel park, on the November date before, and then it carries on around. So they get a record in each country on the way around on the timeline. So it's quite a clever thing.
Wow, that is, and that gives, I think, a lot of folks an opportunity to get in there and do something, at least instead of having to, I don't know, it probably saves Guinness the trouble, too, of go flying out to each record holder every time.
I got outdone. I thought mine was the most iconic that year until we got to the States, and you've got a bulldog over there that can skateboard, and it went underneath 25 people's legs with them open, and that just made it onto every newspaper over here and the TV and all that. So we got outdone by a dog on a skateboard.
Oh man, well, hey, that's one way to set the bar. Gotta beat that pesky dog for the Guinness World Record. So, Alastair, really appreciate it. I want to thank you for joining me on the show today.
Okay, thanks, Matt, and everybody drive safely and don't try and copy me.
Don't try this at home. There you go. Do it on a nice, well-sanctioned racetrack at the very least.
Or I never told you to do it. That's the other one, yeah.
Right. You didn't hear it. You didn't hear it from Alastair. So yeah. There we go. Alastair Moffatt, 13-time Guinness World Record holder for precision driving. I want to thank him, of course, for joining me on the show, and thank you for listening to this very, very special edition of the Automotive ADHD Show. Now, of course, if you want to be involved with the show, if you've got car sounds you'd like to share, you can do that. You can also send your thoughts into the Facebook page, facebook.com/automotive ADHD. And of course, I want to thank the Patreon subscribers for making this show a possibility and allowing me to take the time and do interviews with amazing people like Alastair, and of course for supporting the Speed Council. So there you go. Now I will see you same time, same place next week when I team up with John Candy and travel the stars in a flying Winnebago. I'll see you then.